Chapter 131. Master and Disciple Sparring. Finally back. Lin Fei looked at the 9 profound sect and breathed a sigh of relief. After the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference had ended, he had not stopped at all. He led his disciples day and night, and they finally returned to the 9 profound sect. If it were only Lin Fei, he wouldn't fear Guardian Primordial Mountain. However, there were many 9 profound sect disciples following him. So, Lin Fei had some concerns. "All right, you all go back to the inner sect and rest." "Yes, Grand Elder." These disciples had all witnessed Lin Fei's display of power at the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference. With a single saber strike, he killed Yuan Ganze, Guardian Primordial Mountain's top Qi condensation cultivator. The 30-meter-tall saber energy and the terrifying saber intent deeply impressed these disciples. In their eyes, Lin Fei had become the spiritual symbol of the 9 profound sect. Lin Fei didn't mind the fanaticism in the disciples' eyes. Titles and fame were like passing clouds in his eyes. Strength was the foundation. He sought immortality. Killing Yuan Ganze this time didn't increase my saber intent. This means Yuan Ganze wasn't strong enough in the eyes of saber intent. It seems I need to go to the Ancestral Master Peak to improve my saber intent. Lin Fei furrowed his brows. His saber intent was aloof. The only way to improve it was to defeat powerful opponents or hone it. Of course, there was also sudden enlightenment, but it was something one could encounter but not seek. Going to Ancestral Master Peak. Lin Fei wanted his saber intent to reach transcendence as soon as possible. Being only at mastery, Lin Fei felt it was no longer enough. Its power was far inferior to saber Qi. After all, Lin Fei's opponents were either top Qi condensation cultivators or those at Qi condensation perfection. His opponents would only grow stronger. At the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference, Lin Fei realized that though his saber intent was strong, only slightly surpassed Le Zongyi's sword intent. His saber intent was not that impressive among martial artists who had comprehended martial Dao true intent. If it could reach transcendence, it would be a different story. Transcendent saber intent would at least increase tenfold or even dozens of times. Moreover, Lin Fei had another consideration. His progress in cultivating the True Intention Scroll was slow. But the True Intention Scroll was closely related to his saber intent. If his saber intent could improve, even reaching transcendence, the True Intention Scroll would undoubtedly advance rapidly. This would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So, upon returning to the 9 profound sect, Lin Fei had no intention of resting at all. With a step forward, his figure appeared 30 meters away. Step by step, he headed towards Ancestral Master Peak. At Ancestral Master Peak, in front of a stone tablet, an old man sat cross-legged. His eyes were closed and his face was calm. Lin Fei approached the Ancestral Master Peak step by step. Seeing the old man in front of the stone tablet, he was slightly surprised. "Master?" Lin Fei called out. The old man in front of the stone tablet was none other than Lin Fei's master, Empty Abyss Sword at Jiao Kongming. Buzz. Suddenly, a vast and mighty sword intent erupted from the stone tablet. It was as if the sky was about to be torn apart by the sword intent. At the same time, Jiao Kongming's body also erupted with terrifying sword intent. Above Jiao Kongming's head, a vague sword shadow appeared. It was confronting the sword intent within the stone tablet. Jiao Kongming was also learning from Lin Fei, using the sword intent left by the ancestor of the 9 profound sect within the stone tablet to hone his own sword intent. Swish! Jiao Kongming opened his eyes. In his eyes, there seemed to be a hint of sharp sword intent. His edge was exposed. This was Jiao Kongming now. Ever since he comprehended sword intent, Jiao Kongming felt rejuvenated. His swordsmanship realm advanced rapidly, making astonishing progress. Ha ha ha, disciple, you're finally back. The Founder's sword intent is truly extraordinary. Even after hundreds of years, the founder's sword intent is still like a blazing sun, making it difficult for me to resist. However, using the founder's sword intent to hone my own sword intent has been quite effective. In just a few days, I feel that my sword intent has gradually become more stable, and even my swordsmanship realm has advanced rapidly. No wonder you always like to stay in front of this stone tablet and cultivate diligently. Is this cultivation? This is enjoying. Zhao Kongming seemed to have seen through Lin Fei's secret. Previously, Zhao Kongming thought that Lin Fei had been cultivating diligently at Ancestral Master Peak. He thought Lin Fei was very hard-working. But now, he had also comprehended sword intent. After honing his sword intent at Ancestral Master Peak, he finally understood. Lin Fei was not cultivating, it was just enjoying. Visibly improving sword intent and swordsmanship realm at an incredible speed. What a great opportunity! So, since Lin Fei left the 9 Profound Sect, Zhao Kongming had been staying at Ancestral Master Peak every day. Congratulations, Master, for making great progress in your swordsmanship. Lin Fei also congratulated Zhao Kongming. Zhao Kongming was full of pride. Seeing Lin Fei, he couldn't help but laugh and say, "Disciple, currently within the 9 Profound Sect, only you and I, Master and Disciple, have comprehended martial Dao true intent. The path of martial arts is too difficult and requires other martial artists to accompany us. Why not have a friendly spar between you and me? You use your saber technique, and I'll use my sword technique. Let's verify our martial arts and see if there are any shortcomings." Spar? Lin Fei's heart warmed up as well. He had always had some regrets during the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference. He was originally going to spar with Lu Zongyi, but it was ruined by Yuan Ganze. Lu Zongyi was a martial arts master who had comprehended sword intent. Lin Fei also wanted to try and see what the differences were between him and other innate martial artists who had comprehended martial Dao true intent. Perhaps, as his master Zhao Kongming said, under the mutual verification of a friendly spar, both of them could gain something. However, Lin Fei knew that his strength was now too strong. Especially his saber chi, its power was terrifying. Zhao Kongming might not be able to withstand it. So, Lin Fei tactfully suggested, "Master, why don't we just compare our saber intent and sword intent directly? As for the actual swordsmanship and saber techniques, since sabers and swords have no eyes, it's better not to try." Hearing this, Zhao Kongming's expression became serious. Martial arts were originally created for fighting. We martial artists fight against the heavens and the earth, how can we be afraid of battle? Besides, it's just a friendly spar. How can we find out our flaws without using saber techniques and sword techniques? You and I are both martial arts masters, so there won't be any danger. Just fight freely. Zhao Kongming's expression was solemn and serious. His eyes were also full of confidence. After all, he had been in the martial arts world for decades and was known as the Empty Abyss Sword. In Zhao Kongming's opinion, his swordsmanship was the best in the 9 Profound Sect. Even if he wanted to find an opponent in swordsmanship, he was afraid that only those sword fanatics from the Hidden Sword sect could match him. "All right, we'll stop when we touch." Lin Fei nodded. Thinking about it, Zhao Kongming was also a martial arts master, and now he had comprehended sword intent. How could he be underestimated? Lin Fei would never underestimate the martial artists of the world. Come, my swordsmanship focuses on killing with a single strike. Zhao Kongming's hand was already on the hilt of his sword. Once he drew his sword, it would undoubtedly be earth-shattering. Lin Fei took a deep breath and didn't hesitate any longer. Boom. Suddenly, Lin Fei unleashed all of his saber chi. Heavenly saber art. More than 30-meter saber energy stretched across the void. Moreover, Lin Fei displayed the heavenly saber art, condensed a fierce saber, which was filled with monstrous, sinister energy. This sinister energy directly locked onto Zhao Kongming. Suddenly, Zhao Kongming felt as if he would be instantly turned into dust with just a slight movement. Even his hand gripping the sword hilt was trembling slightly. Zhao Kongming had seen Lin Fei display the 30-meter-tall saber energy before. At that time, he had only felt shocked. Moreover, it was not aimed at him. As a bystander, his feelings were not too real. But now, when Lin Fei's saber chi locked onto Zhao Kongming finally felt how terrifying this 30-meter-tall saber energy really was. Master, why haven't you drawn your sword yet? Do you want your disciple to make the first move? Lin Fei was a bit puzzled. Zhao Kongming's hand gripping the sword hilt showed no signs of movement. It seemed like he was letting Lin Fei make the first move. Thinking of this, Lin Fei didn't hesitate any longer. He prepared to slash down his saber chi. Stop! Zhao Kongming immediately shouted, "Disciple, you're right, sabers and swords have no eyes. Besides, at our level, having comprehended martial Dao true intent, no need to wield sabers and swords. Why don't we just compare our sword intent and saber intent directly and stop when we touch? What do you think, disciple?" Zhao Kongming gradually loosened his grip on the sword hilt. It seemed that he was really not planning to draw his sword. Chapter 132. Yuan Gangsa deserved to die. Compare saber intent and sword intent. Lin Fei's eyes flickered slightly. Looking at Zhao Kongming's tense expression, Lin Fei seemed to faintly understand something. So, Lin Fei directly waved his hand. The 30-meter-tall saber energy instantly collapsed and disappeared without a trace. Master is right, sabers and swords have no eyes. We martial artists who have comprehended martial Dao true intent can compare martial Dao true intent. There's no need to wield sabers and swords. However, does Master really want to compare saber intent with his disciple? Of course, come on, let me see how far your saber intent has progressed. Zhao Kongming saw Lin Fei withdraw his saber energy. After the terrifying 30-meter saber energy completely collapsed and disappeared, his heart finally relaxed a bit. That 30-meter-tall saber energy was really frightening just looking at it. He actually wanted to have a friendly spar with Lin Fei using saber techniques and sword techniques just now. Thinking about it now, it was scary. Zhao Kongming knew how fierce his disciple was. He had killed He Mountain Dao's Qi condensation cultivators with a single saber strike. It would be better to compare saber intent and sword intent. It's not as dangerous. Master, this is my saber intent, please give me your guidance. The next moment, Lin Fei's saber intent burst forth from within his body. Boom! The terrifying saber intent soared into the sky. The sharp aura filled the air above the ancestral master peak. It was as if countless sharp great sabers were suspended above Zhao Kongming's head, ready to fall at any time, putting immense pressure on Zhao Kongming. Zhao Kongming's face stiffened slightly. At that moment Lin Fei unleashed his saber intent. He already knew his sword intent was far inferior to Lin Fei's. Even the gap was huge. Lin Fei had no expression on his face. However, he knew his saber intent had reached mastery. His master Zhao Kongming had only just begun to comprehend sword intent. There was still a long way to go to reach mastery. Martial Dao true intent, a difference of one realm, was a world of difference. There was no comparison at all. Even Li Zongyi, who had comprehended sword intent for many years, was suppressed by Lin Fei's saber intent. Not to mention Zhao Kongming. For a moment, Zhao Kongming fell silent. Forget it, there's no need to compare saber intent and sword intent. You and I are master and disciple, and the sharpness of our saber intent and sword intent can cause harm to the opponent's martial Dao true intent if we are not careful. It's better not to compare. Zhao Kongming's expression was resolute. He refused to unleash his sword intent. Master, it's true that saber intent and sword intent are sharp and dangerous, but I also have fist intent. I don't know if Master would be willing to. Lin Fei hesitated for a moment before saying, "Fist intent didn't seem as dangerous. It might be worth comparing." Zhao Kongming resolutely refused. "Disciple, you've just come back, you should rest more. If you really want to spar, let's do it another day. I want to ask you about this trip to the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference. How did you come back so soon?" Zhao Kongming immediately changed the subject. It seemed that he had just realized Lin Fei's return seemed a bit too fast. He had also led a team to participate in the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference in the past. From the time they left to the time they returned, it should have taken at least 10 days to half a month. After all, after the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference was over, many martial artists would often stay behind to continue exchanging and networking for a while. But Lin Fei, it hadn't even been 10 days since he left the Nine Profound Sect. Lin Fei also withdrew his saber intent. He then explained, "Master, the trip to the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference went smoothly. However, after it began, suddenly a Qi condensation cultivator from Guardian Primordial Mountain, Yuan Ganze, wanted to seal off the Martial Alliance and prevent anyone from leaving. Yuan Ganze's reason was to capture a demonic cultivator who had stolen Guardian Primordial Mountain's techniques. That demonic cultivator was hiding in the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference. Moreover, those Qi condensation cultivators from Guardian Primordial Mountain even attacked other martial artists. Those who dared to resist were killed without mercy. Left with no choice, I had to draw my saber and kill Yuan Ganze. So, the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference ended early. I brought those inner disciples back to the Nine Profound Sect." Lin Fei briefly explained his experience during the Martial Alliance Exchange Conference. "Wait, you killed Yuan Ganze, the top Qi condensation cultivator of Guardian Primordial Mountain, who had reached the 11th level of Qi condensation?" Zhao Kongming suddenly asked with a serious expression. Yes, it was him. However, he didn't seem to be much different from the two high-level Qi condensation cultivators of He Mountain Dao. I ended them all with a single saber strike. Lin Fei calmly said. He didn't think it was a big deal. Whether it was the 11th level of Qi condensation or the 9th level, for Lin Fei, it was all the same. He killed them all with just one saber strike, never needing a second one. Zhao Kongming fell silent again. He didn't know how many times he had fallen silent. At this moment, he felt somewhat speechless. What did it mean that there was no significant difference between the top Qi condensation cultivators and high-level Qi condensation cultivators? What did it mean to end them all with a single saber strike? Top Qi condensation cultivators were usually only dealt with by Grandmaster-level martial artists. Those below the Grandmaster level would face great danger when encountering a top Qi condensation cultivator. Throughout the entire Great Chan, when a top Qi condensation cultivator appeared, the martial artists had almost no way to deal with them. Especially Yuan Ganze, who wasn't an ordinary top Qi condensation cultivator. He had reached the 11th level of Qi condensation. He was only one step away from Qi condensation perfection. Such a top Qi condensation cultivator could be considered one of the strongest in the entire Great Chan. And yet, he was slain by Lin Fei with a single saber strike. Judging from Lin Fei's demeanor, it seemed that he didn't exert much effort. Now, Zhao Kongming thought about it. He had previously wanted to spar with Lin Fei. It was really too dangerous. Maybe Lin Fei would accidentally unleash his saber qi, and with a single saber strike, Zhao Kongming would be slain. That would be a great joke. After a long time, Zhao Kongming slowly sighed and said, "Disciple, you've caused trouble again. It seems that every time you go down the mountain, you stir up trouble. Last time, it was He Mountain Dao. This time, it's Guardian Primordial Mountain. From high-level Qi condensation cultivators to top Qi condensation cultivators. Your master is starting to suspect that the next time you go down the mountain, you'll provoke a foundation establishment cultivator." Zhao Kongming looked at Lin Fei with a complicated expression. His disciple was good in every aspect, except that he caused too much trouble. And not just small trouble, but big trouble every time. He Mountain Dao was already bad enough. They were now forced to seal off their mountain. Although Lin Fei didn't cause He Mountain Dao to seal off the mountain, their decision to do so had a direct connection with Lin Fei. Now it was Guardian Primordial Mountain. A prominent 11th level Qi Condensation Core Elder, a top Qi Condensation cultivator, was slain by Lin Fei with a single saber strike. By the way, did you find the demonic cultivator Yuan Gangzi mentioned? Zhao Kongming suddenly asked. Demonic cultivator? Lin Fei thought carefully. He had completely forgotten. None of the innate masters from the 13 sects of the Martial Alliance had thought of it. It was likely that even if there was a demonic cultivator, they had already blended into the crowd and escaped. Lin Fei took a deep breath, his eyes as sharp as a saber, and said in a low voice, Master, is the presence of a demonic cultivator important? Yuan Gangzi represented Guardian Primordial Mountain and the Qi Condensation cultivators. The Martial Alliance represents the martial arts sects and the martial artists of the world. Yuan Gangzi trampled on the dignity of martial artists. If the founder of our 9 profound sect was still alive, would Yuan Gangzi dare to do this? Even if the Great Chan founder was still here, during the peak of Great Chan's martial arts, would Yuan Gangzi dare to do this? Yuan Gangzi was searching for a demonic cultivator, yet he trampled on the dignity of all the martial artists in Great Chan. If I don't kill Yuan Gangzi, I will never be at peace. Zhao Kongming looked at Lin Fei's resolute expression. His heart was slightly shaken. He had thought that Lin Fei was just prone to causing trouble, causing a big incident every time. However, it seemed now Lin Fei's decision to kill Yuan Gangzi was well thought out. Yuan Gangzi trampled on the dignity of martial artists all over the world. As a martial artist, if he didn't kill Yuan Gangzi, his heart would never be at ease. When his faith in martial arts was gone, from then on, his martial arts would never progress. Yuan Gangzi deserved to die. Chapter 133. Stone Tablet Shattered. Disciple, you are right, Yuan Gangzi deserved his death. Since Yuan Gangzi is dead, let it be. Guardian Primordial Mountain is indeed stronger than He Mountain Dao. However, with the imperial family suppressing the world, at least in recent years, they dare not do anything, Zhao Kongming said coldly. Lin Fei raised his head, looked at Zhao Kongming, and calmly asked, Master, there is something I don't understand, and I would like to ask for your guidance. Speak. Those immortal sects seem to be getting more and more unscrupulous. But they haven't caused any large-scale incidents. It's as if they are waiting for something. What exactly are they waiting for? Lin Fei had always been puzzled. Logically speaking, the Great Chan dynasty suppressed the world. Now that the world was unstable, the imperial family was weak and unable to control the local areas. It should be the time for these immortal sects to be active. But although they were somewhat unscrupulous, they were also somewhat restrained. This seems contradictory. Zhao Kongming's eyes were deep, and he sneered, they are waiting for the imperial family's supreme elder to pass away. The world's instability is indeed due to the imperial family's poor governance and the corruption and degeneration of the court. However, the key point is that the imperial family's supreme elder is not far from his life limit. Although the supreme elder is not as powerful as the Great Chan founder who could suppress the world, be invincible, and dominate everywhere, he is still an extraordinary cultivator, a top-tier foundation establishment expert. It is precisely because of this imperial supreme elder that the Great Chan dynasty was able to revive. Otherwise, the Great Chan dynasty would have disintegrated long ago. Those immortal sects are now so active, yet they remain polite. They are actually fearing that imperial supreme elder. Once the imperial supreme elder passes away, it will probably be the time for chaos in the world and the disintegration of the Great Chan dynasty. Zhao Kunming, as an elderly martial artist, could see the situation very clearly. The current Great Chan seemed calm, but in fact, it had long been filled with undercurrents. Once the Imperial Supreme Elder passed away, the world would undoubtedly fall into chaos. Now those immortal sects were actually withholding. This time they probably won't mobilize a large force. Even if Lin Fei just killed Yuan Ganze, Guardian Primordial Mountain wouldn't be furious, and they won't come to Nine Profound Sect to capture people. Because they are focused on the big picture and waiting for the Imperial Supreme Elder to pass away. Once the Imperial Supreme Elder passes away, whether it's He Mountain Dao or Guardian Primordial Mountain, it probably won't be so easy to deal with. At that time, the immortal sects would surely rise. Perhaps Nine Profound Sect would be in trouble. Lin Fei's expression became serious. He understood everything. That is to say, even if He Mountain Dao and Guardian Primordial Mountain really gave birth to Foundation establishment experts, they most likely won't do anything to the Nine Profound Sect. The Imperial Supreme Elder was like the anchor for the entire Great Chan. As long as the Supreme Elder didn't encounter any accidents, no matter how turbulent the world was, it would always remain an undercurrent. But once the Supreme Elder dies, those immortal sects will raise their banners and return to the world, completely controlling the secular power of the world. Such things have happened before. Before the establishment of the Great Chan, it was like this. Immortal sects controlled the entire world. Various forces fought, and the people suffered. Finally, the Great Chan founder emerged, with the supreme power of a martial saint, sweeping across the world, establishing the Great Chan dynasty. Only then could the world enjoy 900 years of peace. However, disciple, you don't need to worry. If you can reach innate perfection and become a Grandmaster, even if you can't compare to the founder, you won't be far behind. By then, even if the world is in chaos, you can still protect the Nine Profound Sect. Zhao Kunming looked deeply at Lin Fei. The reason why the Nine Profound Sect values Lin Fei so much, even giving him everything he wanted and fully supporting him, even if it meant offending some immortal sects, was because they saw the hope of Lin Fei becoming a Grandmaster. At that time, if they want to protect the sect in the chaos of the world, there must be a Grandmaster to sit in the town. And Lin Fei is almost the only hope of the Nine Profound Sect. Master, rest assured, I will definitely practice hard, strive to become a Grandmaster as soon as possible, and live up to the expectations of the sect. Lin Fei said solemnly. Good, I naturally believe in you. You continue to practice here at the Ancestral Master Peak. My sword intent is almost stable. Zhao Kunming voluntarily gave up his position and left the Ancestral Master Peak. Lin Fei didn't stand on ceremony. He immediately sat cross-legged under the stone tablet. Now that he knew that the entire world might fall into chaos in the next few years, he had to seize every opportunity to enhance his strength. A Grandmaster of martial arts can protect the sect. However, my goal is not just to become a master or a Grandmaster. What I want is longevity. To enter the Tao through martial arts and step onto the path of longevity. Lin Fei murmured softly. Then, he closed his eyes. Time flew by, and 2 months passed. Every day, Lin Fei practiced on the Ancestral Master Peak, using the saber intent left by the Nine Profound Sect's founder to sharpen his own saber intent. On this day, Lin Fei was still doing the same thing as usual. He stimulated his own saber intent, hoping to trigger the saber intent on the stone tablet so that he could continue to sharpen his saber intent. However, an unexpected change occurred. Crack. A soft sound. The stone tablet cracked. Lin Fei opened his eyes. His gaze instantly fell on the stone tablet in front of him. A crack had appeared on the tablet. Although the crack was small and subtle, if he didn't look closely, Lin Fei wouldn't even notice it. But a crack is still a crack. This meant that there was a problem with the stone tablet. But this stone tablet had been exposed to wind and rain on the ancestral master peak for 900 years. There were no cracks before, and it had only been slightly weathered but not seriously. How did it suddenly crack? Lin Fei looked at the stone tablet in front of him. He sensed martial Dao true intent within the tablet. Suddenly, Lin Fei understood. It's martial Dao true intent. The martial Dao true intent left by the founder is in the perfection realm. 3 strands of martial Dao true intent, for a full 900 years, had already merged with the stone tablet. But as I constantly stimulated the martial Dao true intent within the stone tablet to sharpen my own martial Dao true intent, over time, the martial Dao true intent within the tablet would naturally be consumed. And now, with excessive consumption, the martial Dao true intent is about to disappear. Once the martial Dao true intent disappears, this stone tablet will quickly become an ordinary tablet, rapidly weathering and cracking, eventually collapsing. Lin Fei fell silent. He knew he couldn't continue. After all, this stone tablet was left behind by the founder, and it still contained martial Dao true intent. He couldn't destroy it completely. System. Lin Fei summoned the system to check his martial arts progress. Host, Lin Fei. Martial arts realm, innate martial artist. Master, mid-stage. True intention scroll, mid-stage, 92% progress. Saber intent, mastery, 96% progress. Fist intent, mastery, 51% progress. Heavenly saber art, transcendence, 0% progress. Immeasurable fist, transcendence, 0% progress. Close yet distant, transcendence, 0% progress. Lin Fei's true intention scroll had reached 92% progress. This was actually quite good. After reaching the mid-stage of master, the cultivation speed of the true intention scroll had drastically reduced. Reaching 92% was thanks to the improvement of saber intent. The progress of saber intent had reached 96%. The growth was not huge, but it was already close to breaking through. Once it broke through, it would be saber intent transcendence, and Lin Fei's strength could increase by several times or even more than 10 times. Heavenly saber art had also reached transcendence, and the tyrant saber could be condensed. The tyrant saber was much more powerful than the fierce saber. Once the tyrant saber was released, its terrifying aura would not only affect saber wielders, even martial artists and chi cultivators would be suppressed by the tyrant saber. Immeasurable fist and close yet distant had both reached transcendence. However, after these 3 martial arts reached transcendence, there was no more progress. It seemed that reaching perfection still required some opportunities. Lin Fei knew that the higher the martial arts and the more profound they were, the more difficult it was to cultivate them to perfection. This had nothing to do with the martial artist's efforts. To achieve perfection, one must rely on some opportunities. The martial Dao true intent on the ancestral master peak can no longer be used. I must find a place to sharpen my saber intent and strive to make it reach transcendence. Where in the world can I find a place to sharpen my saber intent? A name flashed through Lin Fei's mind. Chapter 134. Down the mountain again. Hidden Sword Sect. Lin Fei murmured softly. When it came to sharpening saber intent, the name Hidden Sword Sect appeared in his mind. After all, Hidden Sword Sect had Lu Zongyi. Moreover, it had once given birth to a martial saint. An innate martial artist with perfect sword intent was born there. For Lin Fei to sharpen his saber intent, Hidden Sword Sect was undoubtedly the best choice. What's more, Lin Fei had also established a good relationship with Hidden Sword Sect. He had saved Lu Zongyi's life, and Lu Zongyi had sincerely invited Lin Fei to visit Hidden Sword Sect. It seems that I need to pay a visit to Hidden Sword Sect. Lin Fei stood up and prepared to leave the mountain. Under normal circumstances, he would quietly leave the mountain alone. However, his identity was different now. 9 Profound Sect Grand Elder. Every move he made represented the Nine Profound Sect. Therefore, Lin Fei had to inform the Nine Profound Sect master. Moreover, he could also learn about the situation of He Mountain Dao and Guardian Primordial Mountain from the sect master. After all, if there were forces that wanted Lin Fei dead and had enough power to kill him, it would be these two. Lin Fei had to pay more attention to the situation of these two forces when he left the mountain. So, Lin Fei went directly to the main hall of the Nine Profound Sect. The sect master was also in the main hall. It seemed that he was listening to a disciple's report. Greetings to the Grand Elder. Upon seeing Lin Fei, the disciple immediately saluted. Lin Fei's prestige in the entire Nine Profound Sect was higher than anyone else's. He had even become the symbol of the current Nine Profound Sect. Lin Fei nodded. The disciple hurriedly left the main hall. Sect Master, I plan to leave the mountain soon and visit Hidden Sword Sect. So I came to inform Sect Master. Upon hearing Lin Fei's words, the Sect Master's face changed drastically. Elder Lin, you're leaving the mountain again. The Sect Master was somewhat scared. Although he was always calm and steady, he couldn't help but feel an ominous premonition when he heard that Lin Fei was leaving the mountain again. The previous times Lin Fei left the mountain, he always caused trouble. Moreover, the troubles he caused grew larger and larger. When he was still in the acquired realm, he killed an ordinary Qi condensation disciple of He Mountain Dao during a trip down the mountain. Then, he went to Chan City and killed a 6th-level Qi condensation disciple of He Mountain Dao. Even on the way back to the mountain, he successively killed 2 high-level Qi condensation cultivators of He Mountain Dao. But that was not the end. The last time he left the mountain, Lin Fei led a team to participate in the Martial Alliance exchange. This should have been relatively safe. Many Grand Elders had led teams to participate in the Martial Alliance exchange in the past. Almost no problems occurred. And Lin Fei, he led a team to the Martial Alliance exchange and ended up killing Guardian Primordial Mountain's Yuan Ganze with a single saber strike. That was a peak Qi condensation cultivator at the 11th level, and he was a core elder of Guardian Primordial Mountain. When the sect master first heard this news, it was like a bolt from the blow. He was somewhat dazed. How come? Can't I leave the mountain? Lin Fei frowned. The sect master smiled bitterly. Elder Lin, you are the Grand Elder of our Nine Profound Sect. How could you not be allowed to leave the mountain? It's just that, for this trip to visit Hidden Sword Sect, I have a small request. Sect Master, just say it. I just hope that Elder Lin, during this trip down the mountain, won't provoke any powerful enemies. Elder Lin has already provoked a peak Qi condensation cultivator at the 11th level last time. According to Elder Lin's pattern of leaving the mountain, this time you may provoke Qi condensation perfection or even foundation establishment cultivators. Our Nine Profound Sect can't withstand the wrath of foundation establishment cultivators now. Lin Fei raised an eyebrow. So Sect Master is worried about this. Sect Master, rest assured, I can't defeat foundation establishment cultivators now, so I definitely won't provoke them. So, foundation establishment cultivators won't come to the Nine Profound Sect. Moreover, I'm going to visit Hidden Sword Sect to see if I can sharpen my saber intent there so that my saber intent can reach transcendence. For the matter of saber intent transcendence, I must leave the mountain. The sect master breathed a slight sigh of relief. As long as he didn't provoke foundation establishment cultivators, that would be fine. But Lin Fei didn't say he wouldn't provoke Qi condensation perfection. The sect master thought for a moment and finally didn't say anything. It was already good not to provoke foundation establishment cultivators. As for Qi condensation perfection, almost all Qi condensation perfection cultivators were desperately trying to refine foundation establishment pills. Therefore, there were very few Qi condensation perfection cultivators roaming outside. There was no need to worry too much. By the way, have there been any recent movements from He Mountain Dao and Guardian Primordial Mountain? Lin Fei asked again. Hearing Lin Fei mention this, the sect master's eyes flashed with a trace of solemnity. Elder Lin, regarding He Mountain Dao and Guardian Primordial Mountain, we have been keeping an eye on them. Currently, He Mountain Dao is still sealed off. As for Guardian Primordial Mountain, it's a bit strange. It's as if they are acting like Yuan Gangsa never died. They have no reaction to his death, which is really strange. No reaction. A glint flashed in Lin Fei's eyes. No reaction is the biggest reaction. That means Guardian Primordial Mountain is harboring resentment. Once the Imperial Supreme Elder dies and the person they fear disappears, they will definitely make a move against our 9 profound sect. Guardian Primordial Mountain is even more dangerous than He Mountain Dao. The sect master's face gradually darkened. He clearly considered the possibility as well. Rest assured, sect master. Once I become a Grand Master, or my saber intent reaches perfection, if Guardian Primordial Mountain dares to come, I will ensure they never return. After speaking, Lin Fei turned and left the hall. This time, Lin Fei didn't ride a horse. His movement technique, close yet distant, had reached transcendence. Moreover, Lin Fei's saber chi was incredibly profound. Using close yet distant to travel was much faster than riding a horse. A day later, Lin Fei had already arrived at the foot of the mountain where the Hidden Sword sect was located. The Hidden Sword sect was situated on a continuous range of mountain peaks. At the foot of the mountain, there was a town named Sword City. The people here, influenced by the Hidden Sword sect, had some mastery in swordsmanship. Almost everyone carried a long sword with them. Moreover, they were extremely hostile towards those carrying other weapons. Lin Fei even saw a saber-wielding guest constantly provoked by the people of the city. The saber-wielding guest dared not fight. Once a real battle took place, and if he won, the trouble would be even greater. An endless stream of swordsmen would come to challenge, utterly annoying. Lin Fei didn't bring a saber. Ever since he possessed saber chi, he had stopped carrying a saber. Otherwise, coming to Sword City rashly would indeed be troublesome. Hidden Sword sect was located on a mountain peak a few miles outside of Sword City. The peaks here soared into the clouds. Moreover, there was only one path for entering and exiting. That was a flight of steps. A total of 1,008 steps. Hidden Sword sect's gates were wide open. They didn't refuse anyone seeking to become a disciple. But the prerequisite was to walk to the top of the mountain on their own. These steps were extremely narrow. One slight misstep, a slip of the foot, and falling would result in being shattered to pieces. Even some Hidden Sword sect disciples had died, falling off the stone steps when entering or exiting the sect. But the Hidden Sword sect showed no intention of improving the road conditions. The Hidden Sword sect's creed was only those who could climb the 1,008 steps were considered to have passed the test of will and courage and qualified to become a swordsman. Otherwise, they would be sent back to where they came from. As for the danger, a swordsman's life was filled with life and death experiences. How could one become a swordsman without being tempered in life and death? Lin Fei had learned a bit about the Hidden Sword sect. At the moment, he had only one thought in his mind. Ruthless. The Hidden Sword sect was truly ruthless. Whether they were ruthless to others, Lin Fei didn't know. But the Hidden Sword sect was indeed ruthless towards its own people. However, perhaps it was such extreme and harsh conditions allowed the Hidden Sword sect to endure for thousands of years. Among all the martial arts sects in Great Chan, it was the only one with a heritage surpassing 1,000 years that could stand alongside those immortal and Taoist sects. Lin Fei arrived at the foot of the mountain and saw many people gathered together. He made his way through the crowd. It turned out there were 3 unrecognizable corpses on the ground. All were young individuals. It seemed they had fallen from the tall stone steps. Another 3 dead. 5 died this morning. More and more people are coming to join Hidden Sword sect lately, and more are unafraid of death. Here, these are all refugees. With the recent chaos, some think that joining the Hidden Sword sect will at least provide food and clothing. And the result? People who can't even feed themselves think they can easily enter the Hidden Sword sect. Reaching the peak is nearly impossible for an ordinary person. Even martial artists with years of body refining and excellent physical strength often fall to their deaths. Lin Fei gazed at the corpses on the ground. It seemed that the 1008 stone steps of Hidden Sword sect were not easily surmountable. Lin Fei turned and stood at the base of the mountain. He prepared to step onto the first stone stair. However, he noticed a young man and a little girl standing before the steps. The boy appeared to be 16 or 17, while the girl was only 7 or 8. Both were dressed in rags and reeked. They likely hadn't bathed in days and were probably refugees as well. The number of refugees in Great Chan was increasing. This foreshadowed potential unrest. Brother, don't climb the stone steps. So many people just fell to their deaths. If you climb, you will certainly die too. Tears streamed down the girl's face. The youth was thin and sallow, but resilient. He clenched his teeth, gazing at the towering peak, and whispered, "Sister, if I don't reach the top and become a disciple of the Hidden Sword sect, we'll both starve to death. Father and mother are gone. I swore I would raise you. Only by joining the Hidden Sword sect and becoming a disciple can I support you. Perhaps I could even become a powerful swordsman, slaying our enemies and avenging our parents." The youth took a deep breath and he then prepared to step onto the first stone stair. This Hidden Sword sect is interesting. They have people climb the stone steps to forge their willpower. Would carrying you to the top count as passing the Hidden Sword sect's test? Suddenly, a calm voice sounded behind the youth. Chapter 135. Hidden Sword sect. The youth turned his head and he saw a slender young man who looked cold and refined, similar to the young masters he had seen in the city. The youth didn't speak. But someone nearby did. Here, want to carry someone to the peak? People have tried it in the past. But you have to be at least an acquired martial artist to do that. Body refining martial artists face danger just by climbing themselves, let alone carrying someone. Hidden Sword sect welcomes all, regardless of background. Even acquired martial artists could join the sect. However, acquired martial artists must disperse all their inner power before joining Hidden Sword sect. How many acquired martial artists have the courage? Many people shook their heads. The 1008 stone steps of Hidden Sword sect had stumped countless people. Carrying another person meant bearing their weight as well. It was such a steep and treacherous cliff. One misstep could send them both plummeting. Lin Fei didn't speak. His eyes were on the youth. What others said didn't matter, he was waiting for the youth's decision. The next moment, without hesitation, the youth knelt down with a thud and called out to Lin Fei, "Please, take me up the mountain. I'll be forever grateful for your kindness." Indeed, a clever one. "Very well, let's go." Lin Fei nodded. He was just intrigued and he thought the youth was promising. So he wanted to carry the youth up the mountain. That was all. Whoosh! Lin Fei grabbed the youth with his right hand. And not only that, with his left hand, he picked up the youth's little sister, the 7 or 8-year-old girl. He then took a step onto the stone steps. Seeing this scene, many people at the foot of the mountain widened their eyes. Their gazes filled with disbelief. It wasn't enough for Lin Fei to carry one person. He was actually going to carry two. The youth didn't expect Lin Fei to be willing to carry his sister as well. He was about to say something. But the next moment, he couldn't speak. Because Lin Fei's stride spanned more than a dozen meters. Holding two people in his hands, he walked as if strolling leisurely. He headed towards the peak. It was called a walking. but in reality, Lin Fei's speed was beyond belief. The howling wind made it impossible for the youth to open his eyes or speak. So, he could only tightly close his mouth and eyes. Seeing this scene, people at the foot of the mountain were dumbfounded. Never had anyone seen someone like Lin Fei, carrying 2 people and still walking briskly. Moreover, each step covered more than a dozen meters. They knew they had encountered a master. Only those top martial artists possessed such abilities. It didn't take long for Lin Fei to walk from the foot of the mountain to the peak. He saw the hidden sword sect at the top of the mountain. In front of the gate of the hidden sword sect, 2 disciples saw Lin Fei carrying 2 people up. One was a youth and the other was a 7- or 8-year-old girl. Carrying 2 people and strolling up the treacherous hidden sword sect stone steps, it was obviously not an ordinary person. Therefore, the 2 disciples immediately greeted them. Lin Fei took the initiative to ask, "I brought these 2 people to the peak. According to the rules of your hidden sword sect, can they join the sect?" The 2 hidden sword sect disciples glanced at the somewhat dazed youth and little girl, and then they nodded, "No problem." According to hidden sword sect rules, no matter how one reaches the peak, as long as they are here and want to join hidden sword sect, there is no problem. Are you 2 willing to join hidden sword sect? The youth was the first to come to his senses. Immediately pulling his sister, they said in unison, "We are willing, we want to join hidden sword sect." The youth was incredibly overjoyed. Who could have thought that he barely climbed the steps and was carried all the way from the foot of the mountain to the peak? Even his sister was brought to the peak as well. The 2 of them joined hidden sword sect together. This sudden happiness made the youth feel as if he were in a dream. However, the youth knew their benefactor was Lin Fei. At this moment, the 2 hidden sword sect disciples spoke solemnly, "Our hidden sword sect welcomes all, without regard for one's background or age. As long as they reach the peak and are willing to join hidden sword sect, they can. However, if one is an acquired martial artist, one must first disperse their inner power. Considering you were able to carry 2 people to the peak, your inner power must be extremely profound. We wonder, are you willing to disperse your inner power and join the hidden sword sect?" What the 2 hidden sword sect disciples said had precedence to follow. In the history of the hidden sword sect, there had even been martial artists at the 12th level of the acquired realm who were unable to break through to the innate. They then came to the peak of the hidden sword sect, voluntarily dispersed their inner power, and joined the sect. Therefore, among the hidden sword sect disciples, those who had once possessed profound inner power were not few. After all, for a loose martial artist to become innate was as difficult as reaching the sky. If one dispersed their inner power and joined the hidden sword sect, there might still be a glimmer of hope to advance to the innate realm. Of course, such people were ultimately in the minority. Those who could reach the 12th level of the acquired realm were all geniuses. Many would rather risk everything to attempt to break through to the innate realm rather than be willing to disperse their inner power and start all over again. At this moment, the youth looked at Lin Fei. If Lin Fei could also join the hidden sword sect, wouldn't he become a fellow disciple with his benefactor? Benefactor, you're still so young. Even if you disperse your inner power, you will surely stand out and become the most outstanding disciple of the hidden sword sect. I've heard that there are peerless swordsmen in the hidden sword sect, with divine swordsmanship like immortal beings. If the benefactor also joins the hidden sword sect, you will surely become a peerless swordsman. In the eyes of the youth, becoming a peerless swordsman of the hidden sword sect would be the dream of his life. Lin Fei was so young, yet so powerful. Even if he dispersed his inner power, he would certainly not be inferior to others. This was also what the 2 hidden sword sect disciples were looking forward to. They also had high hopes for disciples like Lin Fei who had strong original strength but were willing to disperse their inner power and join the hidden sword sect. Once such disciples joined the hidden sword sect, most of them would become outstanding among the disciples of the sect. Even some could truly advance to the innate realm and become martial arts masters. Lin Fei looked at the two hidden sword sect disciples. Then he looked at the youth. He shook his head slightly and said calmly, "I'm a saber practitioner, I don't practice the sword. I won't join the hidden sword sect." The expressions of the two hidden sword sect disciples changed. "You've come to the peak. You don't practice the sword, nor do you want to be a disciple. So, what is the purpose of your visit to our hidden sword sect?" Lin Fei glanced at the gate of the hidden sword sect. Then he gave a faint smile. "I don't want to be a disciple, I've come to pay my respects to the mountain." The next moment, the saber intent within Lin Fei's body was stimulated. Boom! A terrifying saber intent soared into the sky. The vast saber intent aura instantly enveloped the airspace of the hidden sword sect. 9 profound sect Lin Fei, especially here to pay respects to the hidden sword sect. Lin Fei stood with his hands behind his back. His voice was very calm, but it was like a thunderbolt, penetrating deep into the hidden sword sect. It even emitted bursts of rumbling sounds. Chapter 136. He is the Immortal Slayer Saber. Lin Fei released his saber intent. It was sharp and revealing, as if the entire sky above the hidden sword sect was suspended with a huge saber. This was clearly a provocation to the entire hidden sword sect. After all, the hidden sword sect used swords. All of their disciples wielded only swords. They lived with swords, accompanied by swords, practicing the sword, fighting with swords, and understanding the sword. The sword was the lifelong belief of the hidden sword sect disciples. As long as the sword exists, they exist. When the sword perishes, they perish. Hidden sword sect disciples would never allow anyone else to surpass their sect, especially a saber practitioner. At this moment, the 2 acquired realm disciples guarding the entrance of the hidden sword sect were drenched in sweat. Being suppressed by Lin Fei's saber intent at close range was not a pleasant experience. Their eyes were filled with shock. Not only were they shocked by Lin Fei's saber intent, but they were also shocked by Lin Fei's identity. 9 profound sect Grand Elder meant an innate martial artist. And Lin Fei had another identity. Immortal Slayer Saber. He is the Immortal Slayer Saber. The 2 disciples' faces were full of horror. It seemed that the 3 words Immortal Slayer Saber were extremely shocking to them. Boom! As Lin Fei released his saber intent, a sword intent suddenly burst out from within the hidden sword sect. This sword intent soared into the sky. Moreover, Lin Fei had a familiar feeling. Hidden sword sect, Lu Zomi. Ha ha ha, it's been 2 months, Brother Lin has finally come to our hidden sword sect. Our hidden sword sect, of course, welcomes Brother Lin. However, isn't this a bit too grand, Brother Lin? Accompanied by this soaring sword intent, a shadow flickered from within the hidden sword sect. Every flicker covered a distance of several dozen meters. In the blink of an eye, it rushed out of the mountain gate of the hidden sword sect and came to a stop in front of Lin Fei. It was none other than Luzoni, whom Lin Fei had met at the Martial Alliance exchange. Disciple pays respect to Grand Elder. The 2 hidden sword sect disciples, upon seeing Luzoni, were shaken. They immediately stepped forward and respectfully saluted. Luzoni was a Grand Elder of the hidden sword sect. Now that he had personally come to greet Lin Fei, it showed just how important Lin Fei, that Immortal Slayer Saber, was. All right, you may leave. I will personally escort Brother Lin inside. Luzoni waved his hand slightly, and the 2 disciples stepped aside. Lin Fei also withdrew his saber intent. He followed Luzoni into the hidden sword sect. Watching Lin Fei and Luzoni's disappearing figures, the 2 hidden sword sect disciples looked at each other. There was a hint of astonishment in their eyes. I didn't expect him to be the Immortal Slayer Saber, and so young. Also, that saber intent just now was terrifying. It felt even stronger than Elder Lu's sword intent. I wonder what the Immortal Slayer Saber has come to the hidden sword sect for this time. For a moment, the two disciples whispered in discussion. It seemed that they had forgotten the young boy and the little girl. The boy was still somewhat bewildered. When Lin Fei showed his saber and tent just now, as an ordinary person, he didn't feel much. He just thought that Lin Fei had suddenly become terrifying. Then, another person from the Hidden Sword sect took Lin Fei in. The boy couldn't help but ask, "Senior brothers, it seems that my benefactor has no intention of joining the Hidden Sword sect. Why did he enter the Hidden Sword sect?" The two disciples noticed the boy and smiled. "Your benefactor is the well-known Immortal Slayer Saber, Lin Fei, who is currently widely known throughout the world. He is a respected innate martial artist and a martial arts master. Even our Hidden Sword sect's Grand Elder Lu is somewhat inferior to him. Actually, you're lucky to have met the Immortal Slayer Saber. Why would you need to join our Hidden Sword sect? If you were to become a disciple of Master Lin Fei, you would be soaring to the heavens in one step," the two disciples said with a smile. They were also a bit envious of the boy in front of them. He was so fortunate to be favored by the Immortal Slayer Saber and even brought the boy directly to the mountaintop. However, the boy ultimately missed this opportunity. He didn't become Lin Fei's disciple. Instead, he joined the Hidden Sword sect as an ordinary disciple. I don't regret it. Even if my benefactor is a great master, even comparable to the peerless swordsman, I believe that joining the Hidden Sword sect will also enable me to become a peerless master like my benefactor. The boy's expression was solemn and his demeanor was serious. His words just now were obviously from the heart. This surprised the two disciples. "Oh, with a firm will, you're indeed a good seedling. Maybe one day you'll achieve something. And you're right. Although Immortal Slayer Saber Elder Lin is powerful, our Hidden Sword sect is not bad. Centuries ago, our Hidden Sword sect had a sword saint whose fame shook the world. Even the Immortal Slayer Saber is far from being as powerful as that sword saint of our Hidden Sword sect. If you join the Hidden Sword sect and diligently practice the sword, you will have an extraordinary achievement in the future. By the way, what's your name?" "My name is Jing Hong." "Jing Hong, follow me. First, enter the Hidden Sword sect to worship our ancestors, and then you can begin as a novice." Jing Hong nodded. But after walking 2 steps, he stopped. It seemed like he remembered something. Then he knelt down in the direction where Lin Fei had left earlier and performed a deep bow. "Benefactor, I will always remember your kindness today and never forget it in my lifetime." After that, with his sister, he followed one of the disciples into the Hidden Sword sect. Lin Fei followed Lu Zongyi. They came to Lu Zongyi's cave dwelling. The two sat down and a maid served them fragrant tea. Lu Zongyi smiled and said, "Brother Lin, it's been 2 months since we last met. Every time I recall the events of the last martial arts exchange, I am grateful to Brother Lin. Since Brother Lin has come to my Hidden Sword sect this time, I'm afraid there must be something. Brother Lin, please speak. I will definitely help with all my might." Lu Zongyi didn't say any polite words. He directly stated his attitude. Lin Fei nodded and said, "With Brother Lu's words, I can rest assured. I have only one purpose for visiting the Hidden Sword sect, to sharpen my saber intent. My saber intent is about to transcend. I heard that besides Brother Lu, the Hidden Sword sect has the world's #1 sword in this generation, which has also comprehended sword intent, and it is very powerful. I would like to ask for the opportunity to exchange martial Dao true intent with the world's #1 sword. I hope it can help me break through my bottleneck and achieve saber intent transcendence." Lin Fei also directly stated his purpose. "What? Brother Lin's saber intent is about to transcend?" Lu Zongyi widened his eyes. His eyes were full of disbelief. That saber intent transcendence? Lu Zongyi had mastered sword intent a few years ago. And now? His sword intent had almost stagnated to achieve sword intent transcendence. Lu Zongyi even felt it was hopeless in his lifetime. Last time at the martial arts exchange, Lu Zongyi confronted Lin Fei's saber intent with his sword intent. He didn't expect Lin Fei's saber intent to transcend so soon. This progress was so fast. It was hard for Lu Zongyi to believe. Brother Lin, sabers and swords are ruthless, let alone exchanging martial Dao true intent. Moreover, the world's #1 sword in this generation of my hidden sword sect has been in seclusion. As for when he will come out, I don't know. Lin Fei frowned slightly, so there's no way to exchange. Although Lu Zongyi had sword intent, Lin Fei's saber intent was far stronger than his. Even if they exchanged, Lin Fei's saber intent wouldn't improve at all. There is no way to exchange. However, if Brother Lin wants to sharpen your saber intent and wants it to transcend, I have a way. It's just that this method may have some risks. It depends on whether Brother Lin is willing to take the risk. Lu Zongyi looked solemn and stared at Lin Fei with a serious gaze. Chapter 137. Sword Tuan. Brother Lu, please tell me, what is the method? Lin Fei slowly asked. In Hidden Sword Sect, there is a place called the Sword Tuan. All the predecessors in the sect, after their death, their accompanying swords are buried in the Sword Tuan. Among them, there are quite a few martial arts masters who have comprehended sword intent. Over 1,000 years, the number of swords buried in the Sword Tomb has accumulated to be countless. When the swordsmen of my hidden sword sect condense sword intent, over time, the sword intent will attach itself to the accompanying swords. Even after hundreds or thousands of years, they will not dissipate. If someone enters the Sword Tomb and stimulates martial Dao true intent, it will certainly provoke the sword intent inside the tomb. Isn't this a way to sharpen your intent? However, there are too many sword intents in the Sword Tomb. More than 100 sword intents once provoked are unparalleled in their attack. If you cannot withstand it, Brother Lin, I'm afraid your saber intent will be damaged, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Fei's eyes lit up. Sword Tuan. Lin Fei didn't expect that the Hidden Sword Sect would have such a place. The depth of its foundation was simply unimaginable. More than 100 sword intents. That meant that the Hidden Sword Sect had at least given birth to more than 100 powerful martial artists who had comprehended sword intent. This deep foundation was far beyond what the 9 profound sect could compare to. Brother Lo, I would like to try my luck in the Sword Turn. Lin Fei immediately expressed his stance. This Sword Tomb was an excellent place. More than 100 sword intents sharpening his saber intent together, as long as he could withstand it, Lin Fei was confident that he could achieve saber intent transcendence. The Sword Tomb is of great significance to my hidden sword sect. Generally, outsiders are not allowed to enter. However, Brother Lin has done me a great favor. With my guarantee, Brother Lin can naturally enter the Sword Tomb. Lu Zongyi got up. Brother Lin, come with me. Lin Fei also stood up and followed behind Lu Zongyi. They left the cave dwelling. Lin Fei followed Lu Zongyi to another mountain peak. He didn't know if it was his illusion. This mountain peak, at first glance, seemed like a long sword reaching the sky. What a majestic mountain peak! Lin Fei exclaimed. Brother Lin, this is the Sword Tomb Peak, and the Sword Tomb is right above. Under normal circumstances, no one wants to come to the Sword Turn. Besides sword intent, there is also sorrow here, which is the sadness of the sword, and it will affect people's emotions as well. Especially for the swordsmen of our hidden sword sect, the impact is even greater. Therefore, I will not accompany you up there. Oh, one last thing. I hope that you won't touch the items inside the Sword Tomb, Brother Lin. Especially those swords, as they are the relics of our hidden sword sect predecessors for our disciples. Lin Fei nodded and said, I will only hone my saber intent and will not disturb the items in the Sword Tomb. Having said that, Lin Fei looked at the narrow staircase leading up to the Sword Tomb Peak. Whoosh! Lin Fei took a step and instantly set foot on the stone steps of the Sword Tomb Peak. Step by step, he walked towards the top of Sword Tomb Peak. The higher he went, the stronger the wind became. The cold was chilling. Moreover, faintly, it seemed as if there were whispers of sorrow. That was the sorrowful cry of the swords. Lin Fei was undeterred and quickly reached the summit. The summit was the sword turn. Underneath every piece of the ground, there might be a sword buried. Each sword once represented a disciple of the hidden sword sect. Whether it was a disciple at the body refining level or a martial arts master in the sword tomb, they were all treated equally. All were qualified to have their swords buried in the sword tomb after death. Therefore, the number of swords buried in the sword tomb was far more than 10,000. Crack. Lin Fei walked in the sword tomb. He accidentally stepped on a sword. The sword was broken. It was just a broken sword. And it was rusty. It was unclear how long it had been there. Lin Fei looked around. In all directions, there were similar broken swords. At this moment, Lin Fei didn't show his saber intent. Naturally, no sword intent appeared. Forgive me, predecessors of hidden sword sect. Lin Fei took a deep breath and bowed with his fists toward the four corners of the sword turn. The next moment, Lin Fei mobilized his saber intent and burst forth. Boom! A terrifying saber intent erupted from Lin Fei's body. The horrifying saber intent, like a tidal wave, swept towards all directions. The originally calm sword tune, at this moment, the tranquility was completely shattered. Buzz! Suddenly, the entire sword tomb seemed to vibrate. There were faint bursts of sword cries echoing throughout the sword turn. Boom! The first sword intent appeared. It was a rusty iron sword. It looked plain and ordinary, but it didn't affect the terrifying sword intent. It instantly rushed towards Lin Fei's saber intent. A transcendence-level sword intent. Lin Fei's whole body shook. This sword intent was indeed strong. It was only slightly weaker than perfection-level sword intent. With the appearance of the first one, the second followed, then came the third, fourth, fifth. In a blink of an eye, there were dozens, even hundreds of sword intents soaring into the sky. It was as if hundreds of divine swords had gathered in the sky above the sword turn. The strength of these sword intents far exceeded any perfection-level sword intent. Even Lin Fei was initially hit hard and his face turned deathly pale. This was the first time Lin Fei's saber intent was suppressed by other martial Daotrue intents. Of course, the sword intent on the stone tablet of the Ancestral Master Peak didn't count. Although the sword intent on the Ancestral Master Peak stone tablet was perfection level, its quantity was small and it had been weakened a lot after being preserved for hundreds of years. Lin Fei could completely resist it. But now it was different. The sword intents in the sword tomb had also been preserved for hundreds, even thousands of years. There were so many of them. Not only ordinary sword intents, but also mastery, transcendence, and even perfection-level sword intents. All of them were in the sword tomb. Therefore, when hundreds of sword intents erupted at once, the impact on Lin Fei's saber intent was tremendous. However, this also gave Lin Fei's saber intent an opportunity. This was the true test. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. As he forcefully persevered with his saber intent, finally, Lin Fei reaped the rewards. A voice rang in Lin Fei's mind from the system. Your saber intent is being attacked by hundreds of sword intents. Your saber intent is tenacious and becomes stronger as the battle continues, increasing its cultivation progress by 10%. Your saber intent has transcended. Boom. As the voice in his mind fell, Lin Fei's mind began to roar. Then, a memory emerged in Lin Fei's mind. It was a memory about saber intent. At this moment, Lin Fei was overjoyed. He could feel that his saber intent had completely transformed. Lin Fei's aura was visibly increasing at a rapid pace. In the sky above the sword tomb, the overwhelming saber intent seemed to condense into a large saber hanging above the sword turn. Dozens, even hundreds of sword intents constantly attacked Lin Fei's saber intent. However, it had no effect. Lin Fei's saber intent only grew stronger. In the end, it fatally seemed to condense into a substantial form and formed a vast saber intent web enveloping the sword turn. Lin Fei's robe fluttered in the wind. His saber intent grew more and more intense. Slash! Lin Fei's eyes were cold. The invisible saber intent seemed to descend from the sky and slashed fiercely at the sword turn. Boom! An invisible force suddenly exploded in the entire sword turn. The shockwave spread out in all directions. Lin Fei's saber intent actually suppressed hundreds of sword intents. Buzz. At this moment, Lin Fei seemed to hear the sorrowful cries of the swords. Perhaps these swords in the sword tomb had never felt as aggrieved as they did now. They had once followed their masters, conquering all sides, sweeping across all obstacles and being invincible. However, after being buried in the sword tomb, they were suppressed by saber intent. Each sword intent was incredibly angry. Then, one by one, the swords buried in the sword tomb began to tremble slightly. 10 swords, 100, 1,000, 10,000. When tens of thousands of swords began to tremble, a series of soft cries echoed as if they were weeping. That was the lament of 10,000 swords. Rumble. At this moment, the entire hidden sword sect shook violently. Even the sword tomb peak began to tremble. Lu Zongyi at the foot of the sword tomb peak suddenly leapt up. His eyes were filled with shock as he stared at sword tomb peak. In his ears, the mournful cries of swords also reached him. 10,000 swords lament. Brother Lin, what exactly did you do in the sword tomb? Lu Zongyi suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart.